Imagine losing a multi-million-dollar European export contract. Not because your product is flawed and not because your pricing is too high, but just because a spreadsheet formula miscalculated the carbon footprint of your supplier's delivery trucks.
Right, which is a terrifying thought for any executive right
Oh,
now.
absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
But in July 2026, corporate sustainability, it's no longer a voluntary PR communications exercise. It is a high-stakes data war.
It really is. It's shifted into this hardcore discipline of corporate governance.
Yeah. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're looking at a freshly published 2026 manual by ESG advisor Jai Singh. It's titled Corporate Sustainability Frameworks.
And it's a massive read, but incredibly timely.
Super timely. And our mission for you, the listener, is to basically cut through this overwhelming alphabet soup. We want to give you a clear, practical shortcut to understanding how these frameworks actually drive enterprise value.
Because they do drive value if you use them right.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because right now, executives are looking at, GRI, ISSB, CDP, CSRD, and feeling like they're preparing for a massive final exam where the teacher just keeps changing the syllabus and the grading rubric, like, every single week.
Yeah, I hear that exact complaint all the time. But, knowledge is most valuable when it is actually understood and applied, right? Not just memorized for an ever-shifting test.
Right. It shouldn't just be a compliance exercise.
Exactly. And what Jai Singh's manual makes incredibly clear is that while the regulatory landscape looks, well, wildly fragmented on the surface underneath, it is actually rapidly converging.
Converging, even with all those different acronyms.
Yeah, converging. These frameworks, they are not competitors fighting for a company's attention. They are complementary lenses looking at the exact same underlying operational reality.
Okay, that makes sense. So they're just different ways of looking at the same data.
Precisely. The organizations suffering the most right now are the ones treating each framework as a separate, isolated homework assignment.
Oh, man. Yeah, doing the work 5 times over. We definitely have to get into how these frameworks function mechanically together. Because assuming you listeners already know the basic definitions of GRI or the IFRS standards, the concept that really dominates the conversation now is double materiality.
Right, the big buzzword, especially driven by the European Union's CSRD.
Yeah, the CSRD is pushing this hard. But let's look at the actual mechanism of how these lenses process the same event differently. Like, if a massive hurricane hits a manufacturing plant.
Okay, classic disaster scenario.
Right. The IFRS lens, which is the financial materiality side, that calculates the immediate hit to the balance sheet. Lost inventory, structural damage, supply chain delays.
In dollars and cents.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the GRI lens, the impact materiality side, that calculates the environmental damage of the toxic chemical runoff that your flooded factory just scattered into the local ecosystem.
Right, the outward impact. And double materiality demands you report on both of those simultaneously.
Simultaneously. You can't just pick one.
No, the regulatory expectation now is that you cannot hide one behind the other. You can't just warn your investors about the climate risks to your supply chain without also disclosing how, your operations are actively degrading a local community's environment.
So they force total visibility.
The frameworks are designed to do exactly that, yes. Total visibility.
But wait, if GRI asks of my company's impact on the world, and IFRS asks about the world's impact on my company's wallet, aren't those often exactly the same thing eventually?
How do you mean?
Well, if a company pollutes a local river, they're going to face massive regulatory fines, cleanup costs, and like a devastating hit to their brand reputation. Right?
It's true, yeah.
So that inevitably hits their bottom line anyway. Why do we need 2 separate regulatory frameworks to tell us that a toxic spill is bad for business?
That's a great point. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, timing and perspective are the critical variables here.
Timing. How so?
Well, an organization might have a severe negative impact on a local community's water supply that doesn't actually materialize as a financial penalty for, say, 5, 10, or even 15 years.
Oh, I see. So it's a delayed reaction financially.
Exactly. If a corporate board is only looking through a strict, short-term financial materiality lens, they will entirely ignore that water depletion issue until the class action lawsuit drops and the stock plummets.
And by then, it's way too late.
Right. The impact lens forces the board to acknowledge the liability today before it metastasizes. Which actually brings up one of the author's most critical insights.
Which is?
The organization suffering the least from reporting fatigue, they build one single robust data foundation.
One foundation, not 5.
Yes, one. They let that one foundation feed every framework rather than frantically building a new data set every time a regulator asks a different question.
That makes total sense, because having perfect conceptual knowledge of these frameworks is totally useless if you don't have the operational engine to actually generate the metrics.
You're dead in the water without the data.
Yeah. And the manual points out that most reporting failures in 2026 are fundamentally data failures. You can't just guess your greenhouse gas emissions and, hope the auditor doesn't notice.
Definitely not. Not anymore.
So, the source material highlights ISO 14001, specifically the brand new update, ISO 14001.2026, which was published on April 15th of this year. It positions it as this foundational engine.
Right, the engine that powers the whole reporting machine.
Yeah, I look at this like a financial general ledger. I mean, you wouldn't invent new math every time you file a tax return versus an investor report.
No, you'd be crazy to do that.
You just query the same ledger differently based on who is asking. ISO 14001 is the sustainability ledger.
That ledger analogy is exactly how a company survives an audit today. I mean, ISO 14001 has always been the standard for environmental management systems, but this 2026 refinement expands the environmental context significantly.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just carbon now, right?
Oh, absolutely. It looks at biodiversity impacts and resource availability, moving far beyond just basic carbon tracking. It establishes the daily operational controls, the sensor calibrations, and the documented data trails needed to feed accurate, machine-readable data into the GRI or IFRS standards.
Without that, you're just making stuff up.
Pretty much. The biggest pitfall highlighted in the manual is a company publicly committing to a shiny new reporting framework before their underlying ledger can actually support it.
Oh, like when a company makes a big, splashy net zero pledge.
Yes, they make a net zero pledge, get all the good PR, and then realize they have to manually reconstruct their energy usage at the end of the year using, hundreds of messy spreadsheets.
Which is a massive legal liability now.
Huge liability.
And to see how this ledger actually works in practice, the manual details this really interesting composite case study of a leading steel manufacturer.
Ah, yes. The heavy industry example.
Right. They operate in a heavy, high-impact industry, and they were transitioning their entire operation from traditional, highly polluting blast furnaces to scrap-based electric arc furnaces.
Which is a huge capital undertaking.
Exactly. Multi-decade capital transition. And to make this credible to their institutional investors, they didn't just announce a flashy headline target.
Because investors see right through that now.
They used ISO 14001 processes to meticulously track specific metrics, like energy intensity per ton of steel and scrap input ratios.
The granular data.
Yeah, granular daily data. They proved that a credible decarbonization pathway requires a phased, scientifically validated technology plan rooted in daily operational data.
And what's great is this methodology scales down perfectly. It's not just for giant steel companies.
Really? How so?
Well, the author contrasts that heavy industry giant with another composite case study, a mid-sized family-run dairy and agriculture enterprise.
Okay, so totally different scale.
Completely different. They didn't have the capital to tackle every framework simultaneously, so they sequenced their approach using that exact same ledger concept.
They build the foundation first.
Exactly. They started by instituting rigorous, simple monthly tracking for energy usage, water withdrawal, and agricultural waste.
Just getting a handle on their baseline.
Right, and once that baseline data foundation was unshakable, they used it to justify capital investments in solar power for their chilling equipment and a biogas digester that converted manure into usable energy.
Oh, that's smart, turning waste into power.
Yeah. And because they had the historical data to prove their efficiency gains, they built a highly credible narrative. It allowed them to secure premium contracts with large institutional buyers.
Wow.
They proved that starting small with rigorous, auditable data pays off immensely.
Okay, but it sounds like trying to bake 5 different elaborate cakes for a bake sale. The GRI cake, the IFRS cake, the CDP cake, without first checking if you have a reliable supply of flour and eggs in your pantry. ISO 14001 is the pantry.
I love that. Yes, exactly. It's the pantry.
But here's the thing. Having a perfectly maintained ledger for your own internal operations, your own pantry, is essentially useless if your primary supplier is quietly dumping toxic waste or running a sweatshop.
Yeah, internal data is only half the battle now. Honestly, less than half.
Right. You can't just look inward anymore. The real liability lives in the supply chain. Once a company has its internal data in order, it faces the sprawling complexity of Scope 3 emissions.
The dreaded Scope 3.
Yeah, and in 2026, we all know Scope 3 makes up the vast majority of a company's footprint. We're talking 70 to 90% in many cases.
Easily. Sometimes more depending on the sector.
But the sheer difficulty of measuring it has escalated, right? We are no longer just estimating broad industry averages. Regulators want primary data from third parties deep in the supply network.
They do. Measuring Scope 3 today requires unprecedented supply chain due diligence. And the manual highlights EcoVadis as a major tool here, particularly their Carbon Action Manager, or CAM.
Okay, how does CAM work differently than just a normal survey?
Well, this tool doesn't just collect static data. It helps companies actively track and engage with their suppliers on actual decarbonization pathways.
Well, it's interactive.
Very. The anonymous case study of a global automotive manufacturer in the manual illustrates this brilliantly.
Oh, the car company one. Yeah, walk us through that.
So they realized their Scope 3 use phase emissions, which is the actual tailpipe emissions from the millions of combustion cars they had already sold, that number completely dwarfed the emissions from their own manufacturing plants.
Well, yeah, millions of cars driving around every day.
Right. So as they pivoted to electric vehicles to solve that tailpipe issue, they suddenly inherited a massive new problem.
The batteries.
The batteries. Their EV battery supply chain carried massive human rights violations and mining-related environmental risks deep in Tier 2 and Tier 3 suppliers.
Oh, man. So you solve one problem by another?
Exactly. They were suddenly responsible for tracking the origin of critical minerals from obscure mines halfway across the world.
Which leads me to a major issue with all of this. I'm looking at regulations like India's BRSR mandate.
Ah, the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting Framework.
Yeah, that one.
Hmm.
Which now targets the top 1,000 listed companies in India. But because those massive conglomerates have to report on their value chains, they're basically dragging their smaller, unlisted suppliers into this ESG spotlight.
That's a waterfall effect of regulation.
Right. But you're demanding that a rural, mid-sized supplier in India provide enterprise-grade, audit-ready emissions data to a global buyer just to keep their contract.
It's a huge burden.
It sounds completely unfair. I mean, it sounds like a recipe for putting small suppliers out of business entirely. How on earth are they supposed to handle this massive sudden demand?
What's fascinating here is that, like I said, regulatory pressure always behaves like a waterfall. It relentlessly flows down to the smallest actors. You are pinpointing the exact friction point in global trade right now.
It just feels like we're crushing the little guys under ESG paperwork.
It can feel that way. But Jai Singh emphasizes a critical lesson to counteract that friction. Traceability technology and software links alone do not change supplier behavior.
Meaning just sending them a software link isn't enough.
Exactly. You cannot email a small rural supplier a login to a carbon accounting platform and expect them to magically decarbonize their operations.
Right. They don't have the resources.
No, they don't. It must be paired with direct economic support, aggressive capacity building, and long-term purchasing commitments.
Oh, so the buyers have to step up.
Yes. If a global buyer wants premium, audit-ready ESG data from a small supplier, they have to actively fund the supplier's transition.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because managing a supplier support program across, like, thousands of vendors requires massive continuous data ingestion.
It's an ocean of data.
Yeah, and human spreadsheets just break under this weight.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the immediate 2026 reality. How technology and incredibly strict new audits are actively forcing companies to evolve right this second.
We definitely have to talk about the shift in ESG assurance.
Yes. Because historically, sustainability reports received what auditors call limited assurance.
Right. The auditor essentially looks over the methodology and says, nothing here looks obviously wrong or materially misstated.
A quick glance, basically.
Basically, yeah. But the era of limited assurance is ending. Regulators and major investors now demand reasonable assurance.
And reasonable assurance is a whole different beast.
It is functionally identical to a rigorous financial audit. The auditor doesn't just review the methodology, they actively recalculate your carbon footprint from your original utility bills, shipping manifests, and supplier invoices to ensure the final number matches perfectly.
Oh, wow. They actually recalculate the math.
Every step of it. The new ISA 5000 standard for sustainability assurance becomes effective for reporting periods beginning after December 15th, 2026.
That's right around the corner.
It is. And the mechanical reality of reasonable assurance is that it cannot be retrofitted. If you didn't design your data collection architecture with immutable audit trails from day one, you will fail the audit.
You can't just scramble a week before submission.
No, the days of cramming for the ESG exam are over.
And the financial consequences for failing are immediate. Just look at the European Union's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAMs.
Yeah, CBAM is changing the game entirely.
It is shifting right now from a reporting-only phase to requiring actual certificate purchases in 2026 and 2027. If you are exporting cement, steel, or aluminum into Europe, you have to prove your embedded carbon emissions with audit-ready data.
Or pay the price.
Literally. If you can't, or if your carbon intensity is too high, you are forced to buy CBAM certificates at the border, fundamentally destroying your pricing strategy and your profit margins.
It's a massive financial risk.
The stakes are so high, the companies are just throwing artificial intelligence at the problem now.
Well, of course they are.
The manual outlines the rise of AI and ESG tools like Microsoft Copilot for Sustainability and SAP Sustainability AI. But I have to push back here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we start letting large language models ingest our supply chain data and, draft our ESG narratives and summarize our emissions profiles, aren't we just building a highly efficient machine for automated greenwashing?
It's a very valid concern.
How can any auditor trust the output when we know for a fact these models hallucinate information?
The author validates that fear entirely. The risks of AI hallucination, generic boilerplate language, and dangerous over-reliance are massive.
So what's the safeguard?
Well, if an AI hallucinates a lower carbon footprint or, say, invents a supplier compliance certificate out of thin air, the legal liability still falls squarely on the human board of directors. You can't blame the AI in court.
The algorithm did it is not a legal defense.
Definitely not. That is why the manual lays out very strict AI governance rules for 2026. The absolute golden rule is this. AI can be used to draft narrative structures, and it is unparalleled at cross-checking massive regulatory documents for consistency.
Right. It's great at summarizing.
Yes, but it must never, ever originate a factual claim.
It can synthesize and organize the ledger data you already possess, but it cannot invent a single new data point.
Precisely. Every AI-assisted figure or claim must have a direct, verifiable digital thread tracing back to a human-approved source document.
That makes a lot of sense.
The manual stresses that AI tools completely lack professional judgment. An LLM might analyze a chemical spill in a parking lot and a toxic leak into a municipal water supply and treat them as functionally identical based on keyword proximity.
Because it doesn't actually understand what a water supply is.
Exactly. A human auditor understands the vast difference in materiality there. Therefore, you must treat AI governance with the exact same rigor applied to core financial software.
So access controls, that kind of thing.
Strict access controls, data residency checks to ensure sensitive supply chain data isn't, training public models. And mandatory human-in-the-loop sign-offs for every single forward-looking statement. AI is an assistant to the experts. It does not replace the experts.
I think that is a crucial distinction for you, the listener, right now. Whether you are prepping for a high-stakes board meeting, evaluating a Tier 2 supplier for your manufacturing chain, or just trying to navigate the realities of modern business in 2026, the key takeaway from Jai Singh's manual is clear.
It really all comes back to that central theme.
Right. You must stop viewing ESG as a series of disconnected, annoying compliance tasks. It is not about writing 5 different reports from scratch to satisfy 5 different acronyms.
No, that's a recipe for burnout.
Exactly. It is about building a single, tightly governed, audit-ready data ledger. That one ledger feeds multiple strategic lenses: impact materiality, financial risk, supply chain due diligence, environmental tracking. They all draw from the exact same well of truth.
That's the only sustainable way to do sustainability reporting.
Well said.
And if we look to the horizon, the manual's chapter on future trends to 2035 leaves us with a pretty provocative reality to consider.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
We are moving rapidly toward a future driven by AI-powered digital twins, ubiquitous IoT sensors, and continuous machine-readable reporting.
So real-time data everywhere.
Everywhere. Sustainability data will soon be pulled directly from smart meters, factory floor sensors, and blockchain supply chain ledgers in real time.
Which is mind-blowing.
It is. And if performance data is real-time and continuously assured by automated auditing systems, will the very concept of an annual sustainability report soon become completely obsolete.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. The yearly 100-page glossy PDF might just be a relic of the past, replaced by a live dashboard of continuous corporate health.
That is wild to think about. Just a live feed of your ESG metrics.
It changes everything about how we view corporate transparency.
So what does this all mean for you? It means the test is evolving faster than ever, and the stakes have never been higher. If you're still relying on last year's syllabus or trying to manage global supply chain risks with a spreadsheet, you are going to be left behind.
Without a doubt.
But if you build that core understanding, that single reliable data ledger, it won't matter how the rubric changes because you will actually have the verifiable answers ready to go. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the evolving world of corporate sustainability frameworks.
It's been a fascinating look into what's coming.
Absolutely. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking for the underlying mechanisms, and we'll see you next time.